Welcome to For the Record. I'm Shannon Perrine. This morning, a ruby anniversary for the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust. 40 years since it was established. I go one-on-one with Kendra Whitlock Ingram, the CEO of the Cultural Trust, to learn about what she sees as the Trust's place in the future of Pittsburgh. But first, a little bit of her background, rooted in both the arts and a mission to teach.
Well, I grew up in Scranton. So Scranton's at the time, it was about 100,000 people. So this was 100% the big city for me. I loved at the time that, again, I could walk down the street, literally several blocks, and I was in downtown. The public transportation was again, I had never taken public transportation before. That wasn't a thing where I grew up. And it was a real city to me. So even though it's not a New York City, and I had been in a number of big cities, Boston, Philadelphia, New York, DC, to me it felt like that. Yeah. It felt like a vibrant place. It's what I wanted. Yeah. I didn't want to be, I grew up in a small town that I really loved, but I wanted to be in a city. And I wanted to be in a city that had access to being able to see shows and being able to go to the orchestra all the time.
Did you do that?
Oh yeah. So as a music major, it's kind of an expectation that you should be going to see the pros on a regular basis, which I did. I went to Pittsburgh Symphony a lot.
They're pretty good.
They are. They are one of the top orchestras in the country. Yeah. Even at that time, definitely within the top 10 to 15 orchestras in the United States. And a number of the musicians in the orchestra were faculty at Duquesne, so I knew them. We knew who they were. It was like seeing, the pros, essentially. So I went to the symphony a lot, but I was also really interested in theater. So another thing Pennsylvania had way back in the day, which I will appeal to the Governor Shapiro to bring it back, is the Governor's School for the Arts. So Pennsylvania used to have governor schools in all different disciplines, engineering, agriculture, arts, mathematics, humanities, and it was completely free. So students from all over the state would apply. High school students going, rising seniors, so you would be between your junior and your senior year. And it was like going to college, and they would be held at these universities in Pennsylvania. When I did governor's school in 92, it was at Mercyhurst, actually, in Erie.
That's where my son is.
It's a great school. Yeah. And also very far from Scranton.
Yeah. Yes.
Way up in the upper, corner. I think that's even farther a drive because there was no direct way to get there.
You have to go down to 80 and then go up.
Yes, exactly. So I was a theater major in governor's school, so I had been thinking about whether or not I was going to major in theater or music, but I kind of saw, my mom was an art teacher, both my parents were civil servants, my dad was a social worker, so I kind of saw myself teaching music, high school music, and Duquesne had a great music education program.
And when you said you were doing theater too, does that mean that you were a performer, are you a singer, dancer, actor as well? All
musical theater was probably my strength, but I loved acting in straight plays, and at Duquesne they had a rather famous extracurricular theater program called the Red Maskers. Number of folks who are in the theater scene here, even in Pittsburgh now, were part of that group who went to Duquesne. And so I was in a number of plays through the Red Maskers at Duquesne when I was a student as well. But I wanted to be in a place where I could have access to a lot of different things. I had, as you can tell, various interests. I was a part of the student senate for the university, representing the School of Music, and I just was interested in a lot of different things.
Is education part of sort of your ethos in your job now?
Yes. It's so interesting. I think that a lot of what we learn as, music educators or even students who went to school to be a teacher of some sort, you learn so many things of how to just deal with people. A good part of your degree program is educational psychology and classroom management and just how to interact with and engage people. And I love teaching. I actually really saw myself going that route up until I really discovered this world.
So is this a dream job in a dream place?
100%. This in our field is, one of the destination jobs. Pittsburgh Cultural Trust, for a variety of reasons, is recognized as one of the largest and best known of the performing arts center organizations in the United States. Partially it's because of the uniqueness of our organization. A performing arts center in many cities is usually either on a campus or under one roof. Mm-hmm. And Pittsburgh Cultural Trust is more than a performing arts center organization. It's multiple theaters, it's arts education and community engagement, it's an arts resource to a lot of other arts organizations from a back office standpoint. It's placemaking, it's visual arts. I mean, we have a much broader footprint than even our colleagues, for example, at like the Lincoln Center in New York or Kennedy Center in DC.
Still ahead on For the Record.
They really had to have some, stick-to-itiveness.
Right. What the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust has overcome over the decades and how they're coming back after the pandemic. Welcome back, everyone, to For the Record, a look at the past and present of downtown Pittsburgh through the eyes of the CEO of the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust. More now of my conversation with Kendra Whitlock Ingram as we recount 40 years of the Trust.
The leaders at the time, Mr. Hines and Carol Brown, who was the founding CEO of the Cultural Trust, were really, and an army of other civic and corporate leaders in town, really, and foundation leaders, really wanted to spruce up this area and make it into a cultural district. They had a whole master plan associated with how to do that, what buildings they were going to acquire to eliminate a noxious use and put something positive and arts related. And their goal was to use the arts to stimulate an economic revitalization of downtown. It was really very, as I have been spending a lot of time looking at the history in the last 6 months with our 40th anniversary, it was really very revolutionary. It was visionary for them to do that. No one could have imagined, I've seen this in other cities too, that 40 years from now, this would look the way it does today. Yeah. It was really, they really had to have some, stick-to-itiveness, right, and vision and money, frankly, yep, which was largely supported by the major foundations in town to do these restorations, to create what we're sitting in today, the Theater Square complex, to be able to make this into a cultural district.
And it is what it is today, thanks to that vision, but also hard work and the foundation support, and et cetera, along the way. When you think about that 40 years, that early 80s was really the start of a lot of the steel industry leaving Pittsburgh.
That's right.
So the ascent of the cultural district in Pittsburgh was really the descent of this steel
yes,
industry in this region. So that's a challenge.
Right.
Office workers that used to occupy downtown maybe weren't walking down here
right
after work to go to a show, things like that. So those were some of the challenges. The challenges of 40 years ago, very different than the challenges
correct,
in 2024.
That's right.
And we have to, I do think people still come down, but you have the numbers,
Oh, yeah.
People are doing it. People are coming to see shows right
yes,
now. Okay.
The biggest, I would say we are near pre-pandemic levels in attendance. Mid-90s, 93 to 95% at this point. of pre-pandemic levels for attendance. It's kind of unbelievable. I think that if the pandemic taught us anything, for those of us who love coming to shows, is how awful life can be without it. And kind of like revenge travel, where friends
Right.
traveling because they're like, I couldn't travel and I missed it so much. And now I think that's starting to happen with shows. People are discerning though too. Like the things they really want to see are selling out right away. The things that they're not sure or they don't know as much about, it takes a little more work on our end to get them out, but they're coming back.
Yeah. Tell me about the reality for you in the downtown.
Yeah.
I mean, you were here as a student in college. You're here living in Pittsburgh now. What is it like downtown? I think it's safe to say America's homelessness problem after the pandemic is certainly Pittsburgh's homelessness problem after the pandemic. How does the leader of the Cultural Trust in this city navigate that?
Yeah, I have to say, I've lived in a lot of different cities. So most recently Milwaukee, Denver before that, Omaha, Detroit, Baltimore. So my perspective on what are problems that are what I see as kind of city problems, not just a Pittsburgh problem, is probably a little different than someone who may have grown up here. I will say that when I came back in February of 23, coming from a city that did not have as vibrant a downtown as Pittsburgh, I was like, this is awesome. This is like so vibrant. I think it's the concentration of activity, all the theaters going at the same time. Most cities don't have this, right?
Yeah.
So in the cultural district, I think it's a little unique compared to the rest of downtown. And we make up probably, 25% of downtown. So it's very active here. I think the downtown that has some of the city problems that you might see in any city, the unhoused population, fewer office workers, is probably something you'll see in every city, every major metropolitan to various degrees. It's definitely better since I arrived 18 months ago, 19 months ago. But my perspective was already that it was great in the district, because compared to, with all due respect to other cities I've lived, which all have wonderful elements, none of them had a vibrant cultural district that was drawing 80 to 90 to 100% sold audiences 4 to 5 days a week, and then smaller activations throughout the week on other days. So I feel like this has been a really great situation compared to other cities I've lived.
Still ahead.
I think we're at another kind of inflection point within the cultural district's history.
What the future may hold for the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust and how they want you to be a part of it. Welcome back to For the Record. We've talked about the past, the present of the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust. The leader of the arts group shares her vision for the future, and that includes you in downtown Pittsburgh. What do you want people to know about, is it something 5 years from now that even more people will be down here?
Well, I think we're at another kind of inflection point within the cultural district's history. It's interesting, again, I told you, I keep thinking back to the past, to those 40 years ago. I've been looking through a lot of the original plans for the district, a lot of the vision they had for the riverfront, and even extending down to the point. And it's very similar to what's being discussed now about what's going to be the center of downtown revitalization. It's interesting, I was at a conference about a year ago. Was it only a year ago? God, time, man. It's just
Tell me.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
There's an institution called the Global Cultural District Network, and it's cultural districts all over the world. This year, the
You guys have your own club.
We do, because we're unique, right? So this year the convening was in Athens, Greece.
I was going to say, which
really
Athens? Okay.
Amazing cultural district there. I did not go, but I actually went on vacation and checked out some of the area. It's amazing cultural district. And last year was in Montreal, which I did go. And the big topic was, what are the future of downtowns? How do cultural districts affect the future of downtowns? So we're really looking at our public spaces within the district and how we can enhance enhance life here that's not specifically event related. There's a couple ways we're doing that. One, the streetscaping and public art within the district is going to be something that's a major priority for us. So you saw, or you may have seen, we just installed these extraordinary bronze sculptures by world famous Pittsburgh sculptor Thaddeus Mosley right in the center of the district. And that's kind of our tease for a greater investment in public art within the district. This is how the district started. You know, the founding leaders of the district saw public art as a way to engage community in these moments of wonder and awe that were not event related.
That's temporary.
That particular one is temporary, but it's the beginning of regular installations, rotating installations of public art.
But it
throughout
also
the
means
district.
to people, it's going to go away, so you better come down and see it.
That's true. That's actually that's a good way to look at it. Like, definitely come and see it. It will be here for a year. So you'll get your time.
You know, time flies. So.
That time does fly.
But
our investment in public art, in placemaking, is you're going to see a lot of that in the next 5 years, 3 to 5 years. We're also taking one of essentially the heart of the district, this full city block, 4-acre space that's been essentially parking lots and unactivated space, and turning it into a pretty fabulous civic space with a great lawn and a band shell and a hardscape plaza that includes, places for people to sit and hang out, and a children's play area. We've been hearing from so many folks in downtown, whether it be residents or visitors, tourists. I wish there was a place for me to take the kids to kind of just get out some kid energy. Free, public, open, beautiful landscaping, greenery, strategic locations for public art throughout this space. And maybe even a place for us to activate with, we've experimented post-pandemic with festivals in different areas in the district, particularly Three Rivers Arts Festival. This could potentially be a home for the festival that has a real, proper concert experience. We had a great festival this year. Outstanding attendance, really full concerts where Fort Duquesne Boulevard was completely packed for multiple blocks to see, Ben Folds or Sugar Hill Gang. But it's not an ideal concert experience. Standing in the middle of the street is not an ideal venue for an outdoor concert experience. So, having this space is going to give us some ability to do that. But even more so, it's going to be an amenity for people who want to live and work downtown and want to play downtown and have a space. You don't have a lot of spaces for that. We have that awesome Point State Park, at the point of the Golden Triangle, but there aren't a lot of green spaces within downtown that have this mix of potential artistic endeavor as well as recreation. So we're really excited about that within the next several years. Going online, as well as updating some of our public spaces, our open spaces within the district, again with public art, with some more recreation, some more places to hang out, some more places to have a coffee and just relax, and really beautify, have some moments of beauty and joy that are not specifically related to going to a performance.
Keep it here. In just 2 minutes, the final thought and what the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust has to offer the city. Welcome back. As we wrap up this edition of For the Record, I asked one final question to Kendra Whitlock Ingram, CEO of the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust. Her answer paints a vivid picture of what else the Trust has to offer. What else do you want people to know about the Cultural Trust?
You know, we talked a little bit about our education and community engagement programs, but I think that's one of the areas that is, I'm unfortunately saying, is one of the unsung, stars of our organization. We are providing some of the city's children's first performance experiences. We started a student matinee series this year, so kindergarten through 12th grade school kids can come down for free during the school day, bus them down. We provide subsidy for schools to be able to have buses and tickets for thousands of kids to see nationally and internationally touring performing arts performances, and a lot of artists who reflect the diversity of the students that are in our city and county. These are the types of things that the Cultural Trust does as an arts organization that I think are not, people see us as Broadway and they see us as the venues and they see us as downtown, but I think one of our goals is, in order to get people downtown, people have to feel like they have a connection with us. So that means we have to go out to, sometimes we send teaching artists to the schools. Actually, we do that a lot. And we're doing these other programs in the community so that people see this space as, oh yeah, I know the Cultural Trust, they do this thing. And even if they don't remember us, if they remember the feeling they had, that transformational feeling of being in one of these venues for the first time, the grown-ups venue, and seeing your first live show. Like, think about your first time that happened. I remember the first time it happened for me. And so many of those performances between like ages 6 and 10 that were just like, basically got me into this. Or for those who didn't do it professionally, it was such a meaningful thing for them that when they are now adults, they want to come back here. I think it's not even about necessarily them remembering the trust, it's about them remembering the feeling and the power of the arts. And that's what that's what we're about. We're about making arts happen, whether it's you as an audience member or someone who ends up doing this professionally. That's what we care about.
That's all for today's edition of For the Record. I'm Shannon Perrine. We'll see you next Sunday morning at 11:30. Have a great week.